well. So, welcome, you guys. I'm excited to see the couple of you that were able to make it this evening. We'll have three of these during this course. They are 100% optional, but we'll actually cover some of the content. We'll talk about feedback. This week, I like to talk about how to use AI effectively because most of us are using AI to help our papers, and I want to put you in a position where you can do that and the playing field is level and fair without, turning in a ChatGPT, write my paper for me, here you go, instructor, because those are not helpful for you to remember any of this information. ChatGPT will remember, but you won't. So we'll be talking a little bit about that tonight too. So, excuse any movement you see behind me in the blurred background. I have a very eager puppy who wants to be friends with the cat. So if we keep the background blurred because they get into it, they're friends, I promise. So I'm Dr. Erica Whitten. I am your instructor for this course. I've been teaching this course for something like the last year for our students here in our variety of programs. I think some of you are maybe healthcare administration. I think some of you are maybe management or business leadership majors or comm majors. I think we now have sport lead majors that take this course as well. So we got a smattering of folks in here, maybe some integrated studies as well. So I see four of you here. Do you guys want to do some quick introductions? I'll pause just so you can see each other, but I'll pause our recording so that you don't need that recording. Sorry if you weren't here. You don't get to hear their intros. Well, we'll jump in. I'm going to talk a little bit first about feedback from week one. And I think I sent out feedback a couple minutes ago, probably half an hour ago, as I went through papers on and off. Oh, there's Marnie. Hi.
Hi, sorry, I don't know what happened with my computer.
No, you're good.
But
Welcome.
I'm Marnie. Hi.
Welcome, welcome. And excuse Max as he walks through the frame too. The pets around here, they do what they do. Um, So, talking about feedback, let's talk through a little bit of that. I think the big thing that I see in this is kind of characterization of System 1 and System 2. So I see a lot of folks saying System 1 is bad and System 2 is good, or System 1 is fast and System 2 is slow. And we do have this author to blame for that. He wrote the book to like simplify it, but like it's really not fast and slow. Like there's more to it. I saw some that were more like desire, like System 1 is what you want to do, and System 2 is like sitting in anxiety to figure out. I saw some that were like System 1 is hot-headed, like System 1 wanted to yell at people when System 2 encouraged us to like slow down and be level-headed and calm. Really, the idea of this System 1 is like it's your frontline defense. System 1 is going, I've seen this before, I know what to do, or hey, yo, System 2, I need your help, right? And so System 1 is really out there kind of identifying what those problems are to kind of throw the flag up. And when System 1 throws that flag up, that's when System 2 is engaged because it needs to be triggered by some type of conscious effort. You have to choose to think because generally our brains, they want to be a little lazy. And that's good. That's like if it was in System 2 all the time, can you imagine like by 3 p.m. you're exhausted. You can't do anything at that point because you've depleted all of it. A lot of people use this analogy of like what they have the energy to do of like having enough spoons to do things. Your spoons are gone by noon if you're using System 2 all the time. So we have to think about using System 1 most of the time so that System 2, we have the space for that when we need it. So that's the biggest thing that I saw. Does that track kind of the difference and the nuance there? Yeah, absolutely. Great. So that was the big thing that I saw this week, and it's foundational for you to be successful long term in the course because if we don't have the nuance between the two down in this week, then next week we start talking about how System 1 shows up with heuristics and biases. Then now we're going, Wait, how does system one work? Perfect. Let's move and talk about AI stuff before we get into system two. So let me transition that. Perfect. So AI stuff. And I realize I didn't update the date on my slide. So pretend that it's July on here. So AI use, I think, is a hot topic right now. And I mean, I'm not gonna to tell a fib. I use AI every day in my work. I create a lot of content. I do a lot of learning design. And that means that it's a tool that's helpful to me. It's probably a tool that's helpful to you, right? I make it a point not to use it to like write your paper comments because I feel like that's a little sus if I'm saying you can't use it to write your papers. But otherwise, in like my day job, I do spend a lot of time in that. So what does AI use that's permitted in the course look like? So responsible use is using it to draft an outline. It's using it to help you brainstorm topics. So when you guys were going, man, what are my examples throughout the day of using system one and system two? I'm sure a lot of you went and said, hey, insert AI tool. What are some examples of this? Because I'm coming up dry thinking of what this looks like. For then you to go through and go, oh, okay, that is one and that does apply to me. Let me use that as my base to write from, right? That's totally permitted. That's a great use because it's helping you have to understand the concepts and then also go, oh, that does fit and start applying it. It's also good for improving your paper organization or like saying, hey, insert tool here. Here's my paper. Here's my rubric. We good, right? That's another great use as well. Uh, we do, when you turn your papers in, it does run it through Turnitin. And Turnitin tells me if your paper is similar to other works. Turnitin also tells me if you're if I jump a little deeper, I've got to dig for it. It'll tell me if it suspects your paper is AI generated. Y'all, all these papers come back, it's like 60% plus. It's not an infallible tool at all. So if you are nervous about what your Turnitin score says, don't there's nothing to be concerned about there. Even if it comes up at like 100%, if it doesn't read as, ChatGPT wrote it, then I'm not super worried about it. Because a skill is you being able to like communicate effectively, even if you are using those tools. If you're going, I've actually never opened one of those. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'll show you how to do a little bit of that in case that is something that you want to do, because you deserve the same opportunities that other people in the class that know how to use this are taking advantage of. So let me jump to this. So one thing you should not be out here doing is saying, hey, ChatGPT, here's my prompt, write it, and then submitting. Um, this is an example of what that looks like. So this is a thread, and you can share your ChatGPT threads. That's a great way to know that you can share what you've done. Um, but you can say, write this paper for me, and then give it the whole prompt. When you do that, it will actually pop out a canvas that writes out the full paper. You can't share the original canvas. It's a little weird, but it does actually write a full paper for you. And if you just copy and paste that and turn that in, it will read like a computer that's not a human wrote your paper. And it does not track well. And I think the most important that you guys take away as leaders from that is if you're doing that to create work product, you're actually putting a burden on the people you're asking to read, right? If you were saying, hey, like, build this for me, and you put together like a 20-page document, and then you hand out that 20-page document for people to read, and you've never looked at it, a little icky, right? And so we want to make sure that we've like gone through and it's got that human touch. And it's the same thing with your papers in your course. Um, Other things that you don't want to include, of course, are things that aren't real. Like if you throw an external source in your paper and it doesn't exist, that's like very clear that like you didn't review at least what you were doing. I always do like to talk about why it's important. Um, I've got an example that I like. It's from Suits. Yes, we're gonna watch like a snippet of Suits here, but it's a good example. Let me jump into.
Your greatest love is more efficient.
Don't tell me. We're merging with Zane. We have more associates than we can handle, and you need the one person who worked at both firms to cull that herd.
Exactly. And now I need you to come up with a list of the 10 least efficient associates without telling me names or whether or not they come from Zane or Russ.
Got it.
And Katrina, thanks for your concern about Sheila and me.
Louis, you know I care for you deeply and in a completely asexual manner.
And I too care for you deeply and see you neither as man nor woman.
Thank you, Louis. Kinder words were never spoken. I'll have my list for you by the end of the day.
Katrina, what are you doing here? I gave you an assignment.
I finished it.
What do you mean you finished it? I asked you to evaluate 50 associates. How could you have done that already?
I didn't. Patty did it for me.
Who the hell's Patty?
Not who, what. Personal assessment tallying and totaling individual efficiency.
Say what now?
I plugged in 16 parameters and quantifiables. Patty popped out a list ranking the associates from 1 to 50.
Katrina, this is amazing.
Not only that, it's completely objective. The bottom 10 are the least efficient, period.
Well, then I guess all that's left is for you to tell me who they are and for me to let them go.
About that, Louis.
Hang on a second. Has Louis seen this list?
No, why?
There's a problem with the first name. He's not gonna like it.
I know that.
Then I suggest you let him know before you pull the trigger.
I can't do that.
Why not?
Because this process is supposed to be impartial. And if I tell Louis who I'm going to fire just because he won't like one of the names on the list, then...
What won't I like?
Louis, Katrina was just informing me that it's not a good idea for you to...
What name?
Brian.
No?
Louis.
Donna, this is between Katrina and me.
No, Louis, it isn't. This is about the firm and its integrity. You asked me to come up with an objective metric, and by that metric, Brian Altman has to go.
So change the metric.
Okay, so that's our foundation. I'm going to show you kind of part two. It's like 30 seconds. But in this scenario, we have who functionally is acting as an employer, making an employment decision about people's livelihoods using this algorithm. And what we find out is that that leader who actually is responsible for the decision, ultimately, Louis, is going, wait, hold on, that's not what I want to do. That's not the behavior that I want to take here. So we're going to jump into part two, where we learn a little bit more context the algorithm doesn't take into account. So I'll hit play on this one.
You ran all the numbers for Louis. Who are the top 5 most efficient associates?
Jesse, Sarah, Ryan, Carl, and Gina.
Where does Brian sit?
Right here.
Right here in the center of those 5 people? Do you think that's a coincidence?
I hadn't...
Katrina, what you have yet to learn is that there are players who never put up great stats, but you keep them around because they make the people around them better.
Are you talking about Brian or you?
Okay, I love this example because I think it talks about this idea a little bit. I mean, this was pre-AI, but this is this idea of when we take the humanity out of decision making, when it impacts other people, that can be problematic. So if you think about you're learning how to make decisions, and if you're not interacting with the content in any way, you're functionally doing what we did here. And I think ethical strategic use of AI is an important leadership skill. It's important to be able to get that data back, but then go, but let me look at it with a different lens. Things can't always be 100% objective. And you can see kind of that system one, system two thinking going there too, right? You see Katrina, the blonde, go, I want this objective measure. Let me build an algorithm and just go full send into that and not slow down to think. So this impacts everything, even when we think about AI use. So I do want to show you a couple of things. This is everybody's nightmare. Everybody's always worried about getting accused of using AI when they haven't, which is valid. I think it's it's so gray. So I will send this out in an email afterward. ACU though offers Grammarly. Is everyone using Grammarly? Okay, Grammarly is cool. If you're using your own Grammarly account, it may be missing some features. So make sure you set it up with ACU. This bit.ly link that I'll send out after our session includes some different features if you're doing it through ACU. And you can enable this thing called authorship. Authorship is fantastic because authorship at the bottom corner of any document that you're working on, you can click this little thumbprint icon and say, record me doing this. And it doesn't like record, but it kind of records keystrokes. So it's monitoring your keystrokes. It'll show, ooh, you copy and pasted this chunk in and where it came from. It'll show as you worked through your document. It'll show where it came from. And it can show like, yeah, I totally did use whatever tool to outline my paper and I pasted it in to start. And then you can see me editing and enhancing and moving around and adding to and changing things, which is the benefit of that. Most of your student success advisors are going to tell you, use this on 100% of your papers. Forget my class, all of your classes, because there are a lot of instructors that are really trigger happy about AI. It says 100% and they go, eek, it's AI, and that's not always true. And you do have times where you may have to go, oh no, here, let me prove. And so I love this tool. I think it's great. And when you submit, you can just proactively share the authorship report that it generates. And then there's no questions anybody can ask you, which is a great way to have that kind of support there. I recommend that for anybody that's nervous about what this looks like in 2026, trying to write papers and earn a degree, because it's weird right now, right? So you can also share that you use ChatGPT and share your prompt as well. That's another thing to show kind of what that original thread looked like. I've got some different links of throughout this presentation, which I'll share it as a PDF after, of example threads of what that looks like. And you can share ChatGPT threads up here where it says login on my screen. You'll be able to click a share button on your screen. So here's an example of what you can do. So this is the same prompt almost as the last one, except for in the last one right here, I wrote, write this paper for me. In this one, I wrote, I'm working on this paper for a senior level course. I need help outlining and coming up with ideas that are relevant to my own life and are authentic. Ask me as many questions as you need to get me a good outline and I can take it from there. And so I gave it the prompt and then it asked me a million trillion questions. And so I started answering those. I answered those questions and I said, here's this. So I'm thinking about these things, right? I'm answering what's happening. And then it gives me an outline. And this is great. What I will say is as I went through this outline, it's missing some stuff. So you still want to run it against the rubric. But now I can decide, great, thank goodness, I don't have to come up with a name for my character. That was the thing that stressed me out the most about this paper, right? Is coming up with you wanted to call your little guys in your head. And so it gives me some ideas I might work from, some ways I might characterize them. And then I can interact with this to help me write out my paper. It gives me some ideas, things that I shared. So it's coming up with my morning routine, the things that I do and going on autopilot for that as an example, because that's something I told it earlier as it prompted me. And so this gives you an outline that you can work from. This is a great way to use AI to help you so that you do have an outline to work from. And it's not in violation of any like university policies. You're totally good to use it in this way and then just expand upon that. And that's going to be probably the thing that takes the most energy off of you, right? Like you don't have to do as much like mental load to come up with an outline. You can just then go, oh yeah, I like that and expand, or go, actually don't like that, delete, let me do something different here. Which is a lot how our brains work these days, because AI has changed how our brains work. And that is good or bad, depending on where you sit on that. But that is a way that you can use that. Before I move into course content, talking about week 2, week 3, all of those things, I want to open it up for any AI questions, off the wall questions, anything that's just sitting with you before we continue. Okay.
Typically write my paper like one paragraph at a time,
Yeah.
and then I give ChatGPT like what the prompt is, and
Mhm.
so it has the prompt in its like little brain, and then I copy paste my original paragraph into it and have it run it against like what the requirements are,
Yeah,
and then it writes me notes, and then like I go through and edit.
that's
Like,
perfect. I
okay,
love that.
cool.
Yeah, I love that. I think the main thing is just making sure that like the writing and the ideas are yours. You want to feel like that as you come out of turning in that paper that like you understand those concepts. And whatever gets you to the point of understanding those concepts and being able to like, I mean, back in the day, we would do oral exams. And if we asked you a question that you feel like you'd be able to answer a pretty basic question, I think we're good. It's just making sure that you're using it not to generate like the actual writing. Use it to generate outlines, use it to edit your work, use it to help you see if you're hitting the rubric items. Great. Don't use it to like generate from day one because when you do that, all of the papers read identical to each other and use the same examples on every single thing. And it's so funny. And that happens pretty regularly in these courses. Okay. Well, then let's talk about decision making from a leadership lens. I think we talk a lot about decision making in this course from this like academic point of view, but I think all of you are in a program that part of your goal is some type of leadership. If you're not already in formal leadership, that's a direction that you want to go or have felt called. Based on the majors that I've heard you guys talk about in your videos, based on the majors that I know take this course. And I think the thing that we learn in this book is really about like how decision making happens in your own brain and like how that happens for you. I want to talk about how it impacts other people and how other people come into that ecosystem. So I think there is this misconception that somebody that's a good leader just knows what to do automatically all the time. And that's like part of it. You inherently know what to do. You never need to deliberate. You're good. You've got it. And that's leadership. But when a leader is making a quick decision like that, it is usually because they don't have all the details, or it's like it's got to happen right now, or there are emotions tied into it, or well, everybody's looking at them, right? When you think about somebody that you report to, and they're making a decision, and you're just kind of sitting there being like, okay, so what are we doing? Right? They can feel that on them. And so when you are in this position, if you currently are, or if that's something that you're hoping to grow into, when you are making those decisions, you often do default to system one because you have pressure on you to make that and do that quickly or with limited information or when you're under a microscope, as is listed here. When you are under pressure, you sit in system one. But when you are under pressure and you go, actually, the stakes are so high, I need to take a beat, that's when we use system two. So system one is I'm under pressure. I just gotta go now. I can't use system two all the time. If you live in system two all the time, you'll never get anything done. Somebody asks you if they can take time off and you start analyzing how much time they have left. You start analyzing who all is off that day. Then you start wondering when holidays are coming up. Are they going to accrue enough leave to like be where they need to be on their balance? Like you should consider those things if there's reason to, right? Do you know you've got a lot of people coming off soon? Do you have a holiday coming up? Do we know this person's probably already low? Have we thrown up a red flag? Great, now we consider those things. But if this is your employee that you know hasn't taken a day off since February, that you're like, yeah, please go, don't be here, right? And you can default to that system one because we do need to learn when to switch. And one of the things that we'll do in this course as we get deeper is kind of come up with our framework for when to switch, and what that looks like. So we're switching from this idea of this book that's all about like thinking all the time about thinking, which is a really meta thing that we're doing in this course, is just thinking about how we think all the time. And it's kind of exhausting. And you start to notice your patterns in maybe a good and maybe a bad way. Two, we have to think about really being aware of who we are under pressure, because that's going to be when we have to make those calls of, do we escalate to system one or system two, or do we sit in system one and just go with our gut, right? If you don't know how you think and you don't know the patterns that kind of you have, you can do things like overreact. Nobody here has ever overreacted. I've never overreacted to anything ever, right? But you could overreact. You create habits. Habits can be good, but habits can also be bad. You can do this idea I love is confusing confidence with accuracy. So you can hear somebody that comes to you really buttoned up and put together and go, must be true, great, and then move on. If we don't realize that that is maybe a way that we think, is we see somebody that's really like got a lot of executive presence and we assume they know what's up. That's a way that you end up in a weird sales call and make a bad decision, right? Is they seem to know what they're talking about. They seem to be confident. I believe them. When a leader makes a bad decision, it's not because their values are bad or they have bad intentions. It is very rare that that is the case. We're not going to get into what decides what a good leader is, because there's always the case to be made for that there are bad people that are good leaders. But most leaders are called to lead people. And it's usually when they make a bad decision, it's not because of values or intentions. It's because they're either missing something, so they're missing information, they don't have the full picture, or they have some type of bias. And a bias sounds like this dirty word. A bias is part of system one thinking. It's why system one thinking can work in a lot of ways. And we'll talk about that, I think, in chapter 3 of the book. But the bias is not something that you're typically aware of. And once you become aware of it, you can work against. But that can be the thing that happens, like these preconceived notions that you have. And a bias can be founded, it can be founded. So I think in chapter 2, if anybody's gotten there in the reading, no judgment if not, discussion board's not due till Thursday. It talks about heuristics, which is a word that every time I read, I go, is that how you say that? Heuristics, right? So heuristics, when you hear people talking about that in like a corporate environment, you will hear people say, well, a good rule of thumb is, right? It's a shortcut. Or pattern recognition. I have enough pattern recognition to see that that's what's going to happen next. Or I'm making a judgment based on my experience. That all translates to a heuristic. And those are things you hear people do all the time. Those are things that you go, experience-based judgment, and that sounds like not a bad thing. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Heuristics are shortcuts. Heuristics are the things that save our mental energy. They are letting us form these patterns and these ideas and these notions of what we know to be true and we know not to be true, the patterns that we've seen, because we cannot be out here analyzing every situation like it is system 2 all the way. You can't wake up in the morning and go, what should I have for breakfast? Well, I think there's so many carbs in this meal and that would give me enough energy to go throughout my day, but I also need to hydrate. No, most people just get up and grab a granola bar or whatever they're going to do, right? You have your pattern. That's also where that heuristic comes in, is knowing what we need and kind of that system 1 seating in that. Again, you don't have time to analyze everything. If every single decision that came to you, you went and decided to do a full data analysis on everything possible and like overthink it in that way, again, you're not getting anything done. If you have people around you, whether they're peers or direct reports, they expect you to make a decision And that decision can't take you 10 business days every time on these things. And delay can be as much of a problem than making the wrong decision. I was talking to somebody recently about something, and he said, well, that person's lack of a decision is a decision in itself, right? And if you delay, that's also a decision. And so we want to know that there are times that we are going to have to make quick decisions, and heuristics are what let us do that. The thing is, we need to audit them. You cannot operate under the same assumptions that you did, 15 years ago. I mean, it's like when you go in the grocery store and you're like, that's not what cereal costs. Cereal costs $2 a box. And you're like, well, that was the heuristic you formed 20 years ago. It's not that now. This is now what cereal costs, right? That is an example, right? Heuristics will work until they don't. So you can use these shortcuts until the situation changes. So if you have been working with someone for 10 years and they have always done XYZ every single day, and you are used to that, and that's something that you base your opinion on or base your flow on. Maybe every morning at 8:15 they send out an update email to the entire office. And then you see them one morning at 8:15, they're in the office and they have not sent that update email. And the entire day goes and they don't. Things have changed. We can now no longer use that assumption that is happening, right? That's a really basic assumption, but this happens throughout everything. This is your employees' behavior, right? This is your manager's behavior. This is your peers' behavior. This is the way your company announces things, right? So when you work in an organization that is like very buttoned up and formal, I heard of someone recently that said HR is reading a memo aloud to everyone in their performance reviews about some updated change. And their assumption was, we've never done this before. This type of formality, we're getting laid off today. That has to be it, which is my reaction also, right? Like to go, it's new. We've never done that. That feels overly formal. Turns out they had a director of HR, and where they were previously, when they needed to release new policy changes, they did it on an annual basis. They did it at annual reviews. And so it was normal for them. The conditions changed for them. So I think for you, the takeaway is don't try to avoid those heuristics. You do them. You have to ask, is this still helpful as you look at those patterns? So chapter 3 starts talking about bias. So bias is something that erodes trust. I think is the most important, like what the impact is to you, the bias holder, is that you lose trust with other people by holding those biases. A bias determines who is heard, who gets the next opportunity, what you are willing to do in terms of taking risk when you worry and when you don't worry about things. Biases are choosing who gets heard, right? So when you're sitting in a room of folks and you have a preconceived notion, I've decided that, what's something arbitrary? Matthew's wearing a hat today. And that means I basically can't hear Matthew. That's something, maybe that's a bias that I hold. It's like hats, I hate them, which is a weird thing, but maybe it is, right? And so now I can hear Matthew when he talks. But it's arbitrary, but you may not realize why or why not you're holding those things. When we talk about this idea of bias, which I said sounds like a dirty word, and Matthew, I genuinely don't care about the hat. I was trying to find something totally arbitrary. I don't care about much, actually. I think professionalism is kind of a sham. But bias conversations feel personal because it impacts other people. So when I say the word bias, I know a lot of people seize up because they're like, oh, they're going to tell me I'm a bad person. But it's because that impacts other people. And so we have to be mindful of those. So It's a heuristic is great, but when it starts to drift into a bias that impacts who gets heard and who gets a seat at the table, that's when we definitely need to go, whoa, hold on. And is this founded? Is this based on like reality, or is this based on a pattern that's not true, that we need to think about? Even if you mean to do the right thing, it is completely canceled out by you holding that bias. So even if you're trying so hard to be right, and do the right, the just thing, then we're still going to do harm, and it's still going to be problematic. I love this that I wrote here. Bias is most dangerous when you believe you're immune to it. If you go, I am a person of God, and I don't see anyone as different than anyone else, and I try to give everybody at the seat at the table. If you're sitting here going, yeah, that's me, super dangerous. You do have secret stuff in there that you may not realize. And we do have to take some time to system to it up and try to find what those things are. And that's part of what we're reading for in chapters 2 and 3. When you are a person whose decisions impact other people, that means that your biases that you may or may not know about are the things that determine people's lives, their livelihoods, their paychecks. And so as you think about where you sit in a leadership role, it is your responsibility to go, do I have that happening? What does that look like? What are the things that I am holding in that space? So, kind of a downer space to be in, but an important space to be in. I have a question for us, and I'll stop after I read it. I'll stop the recording after I read it because I want you guys to be answering fully. But I have a case study. I love a case study. You may go, I don't love a case study, and that's okay. We'll sit in it together. So this is your Audrey in this scenario, and your employee is Faith. So Faith's manager, Audrey, she was previously her peer, so they were coworkers. As a peer, this is what the now manager, Audrey, held as beliefs about Faith. So Audrey felt like Faith was messy, unprofessional, had less work than the rest of the team, and kind of is never working. After Audrey became Faith's direct manager, she noticed that Faith was unavailable for long stretches of time, just 3 days into being her manager. So she immediately was like, Faith is out here stealing time, and contacted HR. So this is kind of where we're sitting in the scenario. So I've got some questions for you guys. So as we think about observing and then making that conclusion, which is part of decision making, how quickly do we feel like Audrey moved from observing what was happening to that conclusion? And do we think that that was enough time? Too long? Did we sit in it too long, or was it too short? What do we think?
She moved really fast.
She did move really fast.
I'm a director at a Chick-fil-A, so I'm in charge of leading teams, and I actually have a team member that's kind of similar to this example.
Mhm.
But like the right thing to do here is to go to them first and like talk about it and like ask them what happened. So it's like wild that she just went straight to HR.
It is wild. It is wild. Well, and I think when we think of decision making, you have to think about what is true evidence and what are assumptions, right? So looking at this list of the things that Audrey is very clearly like putting as bullets in this email to HR, messy and professional, doesn't work as much, is never working, is stealing time. What of that is evidence and what of that are assumptions? Week. That's my last slide for tonight. So I am in here for you guys if you have any questions, you things you want to talk through, anything like that. Otherwise, I will catch you in the discussion boards and your assignment feedback over the next 2 weeks. And we will be back here for a session on the 21st if you would like to join. So thank you guys. It's exciting to see some faces today.